Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. Today we're looking at some brand new cards which have come out of Animation Chronicle 2022. This is a series of booster cards which have been initially released within the anime and now have come into physical distribution. Royal Straight Slasher is a warrior light attribute level 6 with 2400 attack and 1350 defense. It cannot be normal summoned or set and must be special summoned with Royal Straight. You can only use the first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. One, if you have all of Queen's Knight, Jack's Knight and King's Knight in your graveyard, you can send one monster of each level between 1 and 5 from your hand and or deck to the graveyard, and if you do, destroy all cards your opponent controls. 2, when this card is destroyed by battle, you can target up to 3 light warrior monsters in your graveyard and special summon them. This card was used against Leon in the 4th series of Yu-Gi-Oh! The original series. This was a duel in the finals between Leon von Schroger and Yugi Moto, and this was one of the cards that Yugi had tried to use against the Golem Castle of Stromberg to try and defeat it. It's a very powerful card in that the first effect, just by having the 3 knights in the graveyard, sending one monster of each of the levels between 1 and 5, you can just wipe out your opponent's cards on the field. That's spell and trap and monsters. It's decent as well because with the progressing level of certain types of monsters, you do have decent effects of levels between 1 and 5, and if they have graveyard based effects, that's even better. They can then trigger at whatever time you need them. It's also not a bad condition. It's not like they have to be from the hand. By being from the deck, you are able to thin your deck very quickly, and it's not saying that you have to run multiple of every level. It's just saying if you have a few of each, it gives you more chance of getting off this effect. Secondary ability is just when this is destroyed by battle, you just get to replace it with 3 light warrior monsters. All of the night monsters meet this requirement, so it fits perfectly with them, but potentially you might want to run this in a light warrior style of deck, in which case that might work very well for summoning some of the other monsters. My only concern with this is it's only when it's destroyed by battle. It would have been nice if it also applied to card effects, if this had been destroyed by effects, because effects are more likely to trigger as a response to this than simply being destroyed by battle. Royal Straight is a quick play spell card, and the effect is 1, send one of each Queen's Knight, Jack's Knight and King's Knight from your hand and or field to the graveyard, then special summon one monster from your hand, deck, extra deck or graveyard that mentions all of Queen's Knight, Jack's Knight and King's Knight. The nice thing about this card is it just doesn't work purely on that Royal Straight Slasher. It can work on the Arcana Extra Joker, it can work on the Fusion. I think they've got several variations of them. They've got a Link monster as well, so you do have that flexibility not to just purely go into that, and you can get whichever one is dependent on your situation. Ideally you probably go for the Fusion because that has the highest attack points. It probably has the most limitations to it because it has to be discarding the specific type of card and it doesn't replace itself unlike the other versions, but it depends on what you need to do. Dynabase is an Earth attribute machine type level 4 with 0 attack and 2100 defense. You can only use the first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. 1, if your life points are lower than your opponent's, you can special summon this card from your hand. 2, during your main phase, you can fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material, including this card on the field. This card was used as part of a duel between Sartorius versus Tyranno Hasselbury in Season 2 of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. The purpose of this was to fuse it alongside one of Sartorius's monsters, that way he could no longer use its effect. It having 2100 defense points is decent for a level 4, but again, because it has high defense, it has 0 attack. If your opponent's life points are, higher, then you're just able to instantly special summon this. It's an okay effect. Second effect is what it's reliant on, being able to just fusion summon. You're able to contact fuse using monsters from the hand or field as fusion material. That's fine, but it depends on very much what you're going to fuse into. Dynatank is an Earth attribute machine type fusion effect monster. It's a level 7 with question mark attack and 2100 defense. It requires a machine monster and a dinosaur monster. You can only use the second and third effect of this card's name each once per turn. 1, it gains attack equal to the original attack of the dinosaur monster used as fusion material for its summon. 2, when a card or effect is activated that targets this card and no other cards, as a quick effect, you can target one other card on the field. That would be an appropriate target. That card / effect now targets the new target. And 3, if this card is destroyed by your opponent, you can special summon one dinosaur monster from your graveyard. This was also used as part of the duel between Sartorius and Tyranno Hasselbury. The first effect, it gains the attack of the dinosaur monster used. In the example given above, that's Ultimate Tyranno, so it will become a 3000 attack monster. Depending on the dinosaur monster, it can have more attack or it can have less. It's just an okay effect, it just gives it its attack stat. The secondary ability lets you swap out an effect, which is also very good. The problem I've got with this is it has to be a targeted effect. If it's a mass type of effect or one that doesn't have an appropriate target that it can swap out to, it would still go after this card. So for example, if it was an effect that targets and destroys, I don't know, machine type monsters, that could not be replaced on your opponent if they're not running a machine style of deck. Alternatively, it's very specific, and it would have been nice if it had just been a pure once per turn negation. The third effect, if it's destroyed by your opponent, you can just special summon a dinosaur from the graveyard. It's fine, you know, it can be destroyed either by monsters through battle or by card effects. It provides you that flexibility, and you're just able to recover a monster to replace this. Golem Rockhammer is an Earth attribute Cyverse effect monster. It's level 6 with 1800 attack and 2400 defense. You can only use the first and second effects of this card's name each once per turn. 1. If this card is in your hand, you can discard one other Cyverse monster, decrease this card's level by 2 until the end of this turn. 2. You contribute this card, special summon 3 Golem tokens, Cyverse Earth level 1 with 0 attack and defense, in defense position. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of this turn except Cyverse monsters. From what I've seen, that this is part of the Vrains era that didn't get a look-in or an official release. I'm not particularly too much of an expert on it. I didn't actually watch the series, but this is one of those examples of the archetypes that had been ignored from actually getting a physical product. The stat lineup on it is okay for a level 6. You know, it's balanced. The first effect just happens to let you summon this card by reducing it from a level 6 to a level 4, meaning you can just normal summon it. It does require you to discard specifically a Cyverse type monster, so you are going to have to run this almost in a pure Cyverse build. The second effect is actually where this card shines. By attributing this, you're just able to get 3 tokens on the field, and those can be used for a linked summon of a Cyverse type monster. Golem Pebble Dog is an Earth attribute Cyverse type vet monster. It's level 2 with 300 attack and 1000 defense. You can only use the first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. 1. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can take one Golem Pebble Dog from your deck and either add it to your hand or special summon it. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of this turn except Cyverse monsters. 2. If this card is sent from the hand to the graveyard, you can add one Golem card from your deck to your hand. The purpose of this card is simply you're able to special summon another copy of itself, and then it can be used as part of a link summon. If this happens to be discarded for an effect, for example, then you're just able to replace this by another Golem card. That's fine, it's a decent effect, and it means that rather than just having to pay a cost, you're actually getting a benefit from using that cost. It also means that if your opponent is discarding something from your hand and they actually hit this card, then you don't really have that disadvantage. Golem Crystal Heart is a water attribute Cyverse link effect monster. It's got a link rating of 2 and it requires 2 Cyverse monsters. You can only use the first effect of this card's name once per turn. 1. You can target one Earth link monster in your graveyard, special summon it to your zone this card points to, and if you do, place one Golem counter on this card. 2. An Earth monster co-linked to this card gains 600 attack for each Golem counter on this card. It can make a second attack during each battle phase. Also, if it attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage. This is quite a strange effect. I can understand that its purpose is more of a support style of effect. Simply, if you can protect this card and constantly revive your Earth link monsters, you're constantly being able to put those Golem counters on this card, and the more of those counters you've got, the more you can actually support your other Earth link monsters. They gain 600 for each, so the more you get increases increments of 600, so if you've got 4, that's an extra 2400 attack points. Those are able to make additional attacks, and they're not limited to monsters. That means you can direct attack your opponent, and if your opponent is running a defensive style of deck, the piercing damage can be helpful as well. Golem Stubborn Menhir is an Earth attribute Cyverse link monster. It's got a link rating of 2 with 1500 attack. It requires 2 Earth monsters to summon it. You can only use the effect of this card's name once per turn. 1. If this card is special summoned from the graveyard, you can target one Earth monster in your graveyard that can be normal summoned or set. Either add it to your hand or special summon it. But if you special summon it, its effects are negated. Also, banish it when it leaves the field. The main reason for this this card is if it happens to be special summoned, you're just instantly able to revive another of your earth monsters. That's perfectly fine. They just do have to meet a specific requirement in that they have to be normal summoned or set, and they can be special summoned, but the problem is you then lose their effects. I think the other reason is because they lose their effects, you can just use that alongside this to encourage a link summon. Golem Invalid Dolmen is an earth attribute Cyverse link monster. Its link rating is 3 with 2800 attack, and it requires 2 or more earth monsters. The effects are: 1, your co-linked monsters are unaffected by monster effects activated on your opponent's field. 2, your opponent's monsters must attack this card if able. 3, once per turn you could discard 1 Cyverse monster and draw 1 card. And 4, if this co-linked card is destroyed, you can negate the effects of all face-up cards your opponent currently controls. I like the design of this card. It's quite powerful and versatile for what it needs to be. The requirements on it aren't too difficult. You're going to be running an earth style of deck, so summoning into this card is fine. First effect happens to provide your co-linked monsters with some level of immunity, so if this is summoned and co-linked from the main monster zone, you can protect all 3 monsters. If it happens to be summoned in the extra monster zone, which is not what you want to be doing with this card, then it will not protect any of your monsters. Instead, it will have no effect. So there is a certain order you need to summon this card in. It can't be summoned immediately. It has to be as part of like a secondary link summon. The second effect must force your opponent's monsters' attacks onto this card. It's like having a Battle Mania or a Staunch Defender, and it's nice because if your opponent doesn't read these cards, then doesn't understand that when they go into the battle phase, why they're not being able to attack into your other monsters. Third effect, just by discarding a Cyverse monster, you get to draw an additional card. That's perfect. Certain Cyverse monsters might have graveyard effects that you could abuse with this effect. Alternatively, if you just don't need any Cyverse monsters and you just need spell or trap cards, you can risk gambling into drawing into some of those cards. The fourth card is, as part of the effect, is actually quite useful as well because it shuts down all of your opponent's face-up cards they currently control, and this doesn't say until the end of the turn, so I'm guessing this is going to be continuous. Any new cards they have face-up aren't going to be affected by this, but so long as they already have cards set up, this will definitely disrupt them. Golem Dignified Thelon is a Earth Attribute Cyverse monster. It's a link rating of 4 with 3200 attack and requires 2 or more Earth monsters. You can only use the third effect of this card's name once per turn. 1, your opponent's monsters must attack this card if able. 2, once per battle, if this card battles an opponent's monster. During damage calculation, you can send 1 Earth monster from your hand to the graveyard. Until the end of this turn, the opponent's monster loses 200 attack. Also, its effects are negated. And 3, when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a link monster you control, as a quick effect, you can negate that effect, and if you do, destroy that card. This is the boss monster for the Golem archetype. It requires 4 Earth attribute monsters, or if you've used the link ratings up, can require a few less. It's decent for the several effects it has. The first effect is the same as the previous monster. Any monsters that attack must attack into this. Same style of effect. Secondary effect, if your opponent actually battles, during the battle calculation, by sending an Earth monster from the hand to the graveyard, it loses 200 attack points. This is not that effective, but actually negating their effects, especially if they have effects that boost their attack points, this will shut them down. Third effect is if a card effect activates that is threatening this card or another one of your link monsters, you're just able to negate it. It is a once per turn effect, so if your opponent knows about this style of card, they will probably try and trip you into using this effect initially, and then they'll probably have a backup strategy to get rid of this at the same time. And the last card is Gravity Balance. This is a normal spell. This card is always treated as a Golem card. You can only use the first and second effects of this card's name each once per turn. 1, target 2 of your Earth monsters with the same name that are banished and or in your graveyard. Special summon both in defense position, but change their attack and defense to 0. Their effects are negated, also destroy them during the end phase. 2, if a Golem monster you control would be destroyed by battle, or an opponent's card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. The first effect acts like a monster reborn for 2 of your Earth monsters. Don't worry about the fact that they have to be of the same name and they have to be destroyed at the end of your turn, because you're only going to be using them as part of a link summon. They're not going to be around, they're not going to need to care about having 0 attack or defense points, they're not going to be on the field for much longer. Secondary effect is just a protection effect. Most secondary effects of normal spell cards do have this kind of protection assigned to them, whereby just banishing this card, you can protect one of your Golem monsters from being destroyed by battle or card effects. effect. It's a decent enough effect, but it's a very common staple. It's understandable why they would add this in. Overall, I think the archetypes that's been introduced and have been reassigned are quite decent. I am a little concerned that you have basically been focusing on the Golem archetype, but it's nice that they have finally almost got practically their entire series of cards just introduced at the same time. I would like to see further cards and support from other archetypes, and it does confuse me because we've got random support here. Outside of the fact we've got the Golem archetype, the other archetypes that have been supported, you've got 2 cards for each. You've got 2 for Tyranno Hasselbury. I can't remember of any other cards he has not had which were in the anime. I'm sure they will be adding more support rather than just that. And they've got the 2 cards which made up the Royal Straight Slasher. This is not something I was particularly surprised of. We have had quite a lot of recent support when it comes to the 3 Knight cards, and even things like you've had that Joker's Knight that have been introduced, as well as the strategy to help support the summoning of Slifer the Sky Dragon, all makes sense. Whether we'll see further support from this is questionable. We might still get some completely random support. Let me know in the comments down below what type of support you want to see from any of the anime episodes. Please refer to the episode if you know those as well, so I can actually have a look and I can make further videos, help you guys get an understanding of what we're still missing from the anime. As always, please subscribe to the channel if you do. I really appreciate it. It helps to support it, and I'd love it if you can actually watch the video that's in the end screen here. This will be discussing some other anime based cards.